Hi, everybody. I thought we would do a quick catch up after Global Community Engagement Day, which happened last week. If you're watching this into the future, it's currently 2021, and we have just celebrated the fourth Global Community Engagement Day. And every year so far, it has just got bigger and bigger. And I thought I would use this opportunity to catch up with a couple of the, as I've just called them as we were chatting before we recorded, fellow pioneers of community engagement from around the world, Wendy and Andrew Coulson. Hello, you two. How are you both?
Hello. Good afternoon, guys.
Now, let's just get a bit of perspective. I'm in South Australia, about an hour south of Adelaide, where it is a beautiful 27 degrees and sunny. Wendy, whereabouts are you?
I'm in winter in Vancouver. It's 6 degrees and bucketing.
And Andrew, where are you?
I am in Adelaide, right in the CBD, in South Australia, also enjoying some very nice sunshine, having just come back from dropping off at childcare.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks to both for doing this as well. I thought it was a good way to capture a bit of the momentum that has started to surround Global Community Engagement Day. I think we might start off with talking a bit about how the day came about. But before we do, Wendy's got a story that she wants to share. And Andrew and I haven't heard this story yet. So go for it, Wendy.
Okay, well, mine's sort of a social research story, but it happened to me today. And the way the whole thing played out just made me incredibly sensitive to global opinion research, global engagement generally in the digital sphere. So I'm a member of the West End Seniors Network, which is the most distinguished charity here in Vancouver, in a high-density, high-rise neighborhood full of low and middle-income senior renters. So one of the densest neighborhoods in North America. And today I received their communication from them, an email, and there was a survey to fill out about COVID and programming in their facilities. So how did you feel about going to yoga or painting or art class, or would you go, or is COVID a constraint? Very fine questionnaire. And I filled the whole thing out and thought, you know, there definitely adults are at home on the job at the West End neighborhood service. And I felt very good about that, the network. So then at the bottom, it said, if you'd like to fill out a questionnaire specifically about COVID, click here. So me being very interested in COVID and interested in surveys, and this was a Survey Monkey survey, I clicked it. Well, in a minute, I'm being asked whether I voted Democrat, Republican, or Independent, and pretty soon whether I'm eligible for Medicaid or Medicare, or do I have private insurance? Well, we have socialized medicine in Canada, right? So I know something's gone adrift. So I've asked about my, what are my politics, you know, Republican, Democrat, or liberal, I think was an answer. And then, of course, I have to say what state I live in and the postcode. So when I try and finish it without the American zip code and the state, it refuses to finish it. So I make up a zip code and I say I live in Georgia and I finish the survey. And, you know, I felt really uncomfortable about this. Now, I suspected what turned out to be true, which is that our organization got that for free from SurveyMonkey, providing you'd allow the bit at the end to happen. Because I wrote then to the president and to the general manager, and they both, I said, this is ethnocentric, and they went, our survey's not ethnocentric. And I said, no, it's the bit at the bottom. But for me, it was kind of all the same thing. You know, I'm on the same landing page. I'm just clicking away. And I thought about some of my friends who are conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers and people who say, well, you know, the chief medical officer of Canada, she's changed her mind about masks. You know, Trump must have got to her, or you know, the bad people got to her, or the companies that are making the vaccine, they've got to her. And I'm going, no. Epidemiology is a very complicated thing, I say, knowing nothing about epidemiology, of course. but you know, this is evidence and she's changed her mind and so on. And I just thought about an exhausted, semi-paranoid old bat like me doing this questionnaire and then being infuriated when I couldn't finish it after I dedicated my time to part 2. But it wasn't good. And I felt uneasy. And my good feeling about doing this for this organization that I'm very supportive of was completely canceled out by the dodgy bit at the end, which I finally worked out was just how you got to do it in the first place, you know, for free.
So what's your moral of your story then?
So
what's your message here?
My takeaway is that we're in the middle of the greatest crisis that this earth has ever experienced. And we are awash with free floating anxiety. People are acting out all over the shop. I mean, people I would have never thought are acting out. I have elderly friends phoning me up in tears and saying, I can't go on. You know, I haven't touched a person for 10 months. I haven't touched a single human being for 10 months. I can't do this, or 12 months or whatever. And in this, we're all swimming in this same bath, and it's existential. Like life as we know it will never come back. We'll never get the old life back, whatever happens. And then the new anxieties about the variants of the virus. And I know that for some bizarre reason that I can't understand, Australia's managed to dodge the bullet. I thought this was a complete country of atheistic anarchists, so I don't understand how you dodged it. But anyway, I thought the polite Canadians would do better. We've done very poorly, particularly recently. So there's a lot of anxiety. And all I'm saying is you need to be really careful with your messaging. Don't mess around. The beginning of this should have said, if you're interested in doing something else, do it. Here's a postcode and a state you can pretend you're from. There's nothing dodgy about it. It's just part of our deal. But yeah, I think ultimately, if we thought transparency was important before, you know, yes, we just have to be so clean skin about everything because we're not dealing with rational people.
Such a good reflection that, I mean, I always talk about trust being at an all-time low, but that was before COVID. And so now it's not only there's that distrust, but there's now, just like you're saying, this heightened anxiety. Everybody is just frail. And we're not so much. I mean, I guess for people around the world that are going to be watching this, Andrew and I are in South Australia, where we are back to normal. We are now out and about. We still have a lot of COVID restrictions in place, but there's nothing to stop us now getting a group of 50 people together in a community and having a meeting if we want to. So we are we're the
not
normal.
Here.
We're back.
I can see two people, the same two people, and that's only because I live alone. It's a mental health initiative. Otherwise, I'm done. I'm toast.
We can have 200 people in our homes, Becky.
We can. In fact, I'm trying to think about how I could get 200 people in my home. It's my birthday in June, and I'm already thinking maybe this is time to sort of test this method. Who wants 200 people in their home?
Anyway,
let's think about this as we talk about Global Community Engagement Day then, because I think you're right. Everybody is on a heightened thing, and also everybody is connecting a bit more around the world. Certainly for this day, it has this year. Let me ask Andrew, perhaps first of all, to just explain tell us the background of Global Community Engagement Day.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I suppose now, I was working for a South Australian government department on quite a large project, and I was doing obviously the community engagement for that project and quite a lot of comms as well. And part of that comms was to run the Twitter account for the particular project. So I was just doing some research, I think one day on the power of hashtags and how hashtags work. And I came across an example of where hashtags have, there's lots of stories where hashtags have been kind of hijacked and used for different purposes. And I think one of the stories was around people hashtagging that they like to eat chicken nuggets on a certain day, and KFC you know, in their using their brains, jumped on the back of this hashtag and managed to promote KFC chicken nuggets using that particular hashtag. So I saw that the power of a hashtag and also the power of a day as well. So the meaning of a day. And we also have a great example with ELGL in America, which is a local government group set up and run by the Wyatts. And they jumped on the back of a hashtag that some of their members were using called City Hall Selfie Day, City Hall Selfie. And they actually set up a day, generally in August, where local government people would go around city halls and take a picture of themselves to promote the good work of local government in front of the city hall. And that took off really quickly, and they have hundreds and hundreds of examples from about 1 minute past midnight through to, you know, 1 minute past midnight the next day. People want to be first, people want to be last, people want to get as many as they can, and all this kind of stuff.
And we jump on that, don't we, Andrew? You particularly do, and Dan Popping, and I've got involved. I won one of the categories one year with my mare. We won the best dressed category. So I was quite proud of it. Sorry, as you were.
So yeah, we jumped on that earlier, probably in their second or third year, but it obviously became an idea that, you know, I came to the Engage to Act board. So at the time, Engage to Act in Australia had a board. We were looking to promote the work of Engage to Act and get more members involved. And so I promoted the idea of a hashtag and maybe a day around celebrating community engagement. And Becky, being the president at the time, and also the rest of the board, were like, yeah, let's do that. And tasked me with trying to get it up and running, I suppose. And one of those things was to actually get it recognised on a website called Days of the Year. Which there's just a list of all these different days that you can celebrate at different times of the year. Now, obviously, we needed a date, and cut a short or a long story short. We asked for community engagement practitioners that people liked, and whoever won that poll, their birthday would then become Global Community Engagement Day.
I'd forgotten.
And hence, that's why Wendy is here now, because
won the lottery.
Yeah, hang on. How did Wendy end up with it then? No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Wendy won the poll, and the 28th of January then became Global Community Engagement Day. And we've tried to set a theme every year. And I remember the first year, the theme was pretty strong, but the uptake was pretty low. The second year, it was vice versa. The uptake was really strong, but there was probably not much engagement with the theme. And by the third year, it just went crazy, and we had lots and lots of different countries, lots of different organizations, individuals across all social media channels getting involved. And then we come to this year. Becky and I always touch base, probably a bit too late in the day, but, you know, what's this year's theme? 2 days before, what's this year's theme? So this year's theme was set a little bit earlier. So it was engaging children in their future. After last year's COVID-19 saw a great shift of community engagement away from face-to-face and certainly more online. But we also started to talk about maybe we should start thinking more about how children are engaged, because children have a lot to say. Their ideas are often, they're not inhibited by past stories and things like that. But also it's their future. So COVID has made us think more about not just the distant future. So a lot of councils in Victoria in Australia at the moment are doing their 10-year plans. So we're not just future. We now just need to start thinking about our near future. So children really need to be involved in that, because they're the ones that are going to live it longer than us.
It was a really good theme to choose, and I love how you chose it as well this year. It's like, right, I'm deciding, done, and out there it went. We'll come back to the theme in a sec, but first of all, Wendy, how did it feel? I can't imagine how it must feel, because now already 28th of January for me being Global Community Engagement Day, it feels a bit like Christmas Day. I feel so like, it's our day today because I'm an engagement practitioner and we now have a day to celebrate. But how does it feel having it on your birthday?
Oh, magic. I've watched this tsunami of enthusiasm. I mean, I'm from a totally different generation, right? Like I've just turned 78. something's gone wrong actuarially. There's an error in the calculations. I'm really only 50, but anyways, some paperwork says I'm 78. So social media wasn't a really big part of my professional life. And when I look online, you're right, it's viral. You really didn't have to do that super much. So explain to me, as your Auntie Wendy, how does this happen? You have your poll. I won the poll. That was great. I only wrote 600 letters to people in order to win the poll. So don't know how that happened. Just kidding. So we had the poll, then it's announced. How does it take off? Like, how does this social media viral thing, explain it to me?
I think that's the power of probably two things. The networks that at the time the Engage to Act board had, and the members that we had, but also it's getting that right hashtag and the message to share so that people pick up on it. And I think luckily 4 years ago, we did have a lot of members around the world for Engage to Act, not just in Australia. And we were able to share that story of how it started. This is this year's theme. I think the first year we did a little bit of a competition as well, just to get people involved, like write some stuff. And it could be in any medium, but certainly then we used our own networks. So I know Becky and myself have quite global networks when it comes to our work, community engagement, and the field that we work in. So we were able to share that quite widely and probably bug people a little bit to get involved on the day, and also just set up a breakfast or go for a drink with a colleague, that kind of thing. And some organisations did that, and other people wrote blogs, and so that uptake in that first year was low, but by the second year, for some reason or other, not even I can explain, it just went global. In that there were organisations picking it up in that second and third year that are corporate organisations that might not even do day-to-day community engagement, but their staff do community engagement in different ways. So could be volunteerism, could be fundraising, and so the message started to get bigger and bigger. And then by the third year, we were seeing kind of bizarre companies and organizations getting involved that you would never align with community engagement, but when they put it in their own messaging, it does come across as what they're doing.
So I've got some thoughts on this from the kind of the hashtag perspective and the kind of going viral perspective. I think the moment that you got it listed on daysoftheyear.com, that changed everything, I think, because and it's funny, this year, I think, Andrew, you were monitoring 3 hashtags, weren't you? I couldn't get my head around a third. I was looking across 2 hashtags. So there are a couple of different ones that get used. But I also recently, just last year, I was having a go at using some of that social media kind of software where you plan in all your content, and it's all sort of scheduled, and you've got it all on one big screen. And I remember when I think it was for my facilitating online conversation stuff, I was looking at, where I could schedule stuff. And the little software package was actually suggesting days to me. So it was saying, for example, oh, you're scheduling a post for Monday. By the way, did you know that Monday is Global Orangutan Day? We'll talk about the orangutans in a bit. But, it would actually give me a hint. And so I'm wondering if the really smart social media managers around the world are using this software that is actually giving them hints to say, by the way, it's Global Community Engagement Day. And that can only be because it's on daysoftheyear.com, I would have thought, and other websites that have now sort of scraped that and got it on their websites.
This year, I certainly saw that there were probably 3 different kind of Days of the Year website that were promoting it on Instagram. So Global Community Engagement Day shares a day with Blueberry Pancake Day, and also International Lego Day. So going through the Instagram posts,
I'll have the pancakes, thank you very much.
Going through the Instagram posts this year, I saw at least 3 different accounts that were kind of Days of the Year accounts that were actually promoting those 3 different days on their slides.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. I was going to ask Andrew if there are any particular standout pieces of content that you wanted to share. I made a few notes as they were coming in, mostly early on before I got overwhelmed. But what were your highlights this year?
Well, let's start with some of the stats. I mean, this is just my count. I tried to use some tracking software, but it wasn't working properly. I counted at least 31 countries. So, that's global. And I think pretty much every continent, obviously, apart from Antarctica, we're involved. So, South.
Right, that's a goal for the future. We want Antarctica involved. Let me make a note of that. I'm serious, Wendy.
So Australasian countries, North American countries, South American, African, European countries, all involved, and some really good content as well across all those. Now, the one thing I think me and Becky agreed that this year is that the theme really struck a chord. So that theme actually really worked this year. And a lot of the content that we saw was actually aimed at how to engage children better, or projects that have previously happened with children, which is great.
And that was a good measure, that was through more our networks, or the networks of community engagement in our world, versus just scraped from the daysoftheyear.com website, because that doesn't mention the theme. No. It's us that promote the theme. So that was a really good measure. Yep.
Yeah. I certainly lost count of tweets, but there was thousands of tweets. There's definitely 3 different hashtags that people use. So our kind of official one was Com Engage Day, but that one's kind of dropped off a little bit and being replaced by the one that's on the Days of the Year website, which is Global Community Engagement Day. And the other one that occasionally gets used is just Community Engagement Day, but not as much. LinkedIn posts, I counted over 200, or just over 200, that mentioned those 3 hashtags in some form or another. And Instagram, again, over 200 posts using the 3 different hashtags, but I also found one using 2021 on the end of the hashtags as well. So there's 5 posts using the 2021 Global Community Engagement Day hashtag. So well over 200 posts on Instagram. The one company that really stood out for me, that did a really good job, and I was quite proud of because I'm from Yorkshire, is the East Yorkshire buses.
Oh, really?
Amazing. They kept coming up.
They did loads. They probably did around 10 maybe tweets, but they also did Instagram, I think, and they also did LinkedIn.
Yep.
Now, what they were doing is they were promoting all their community work. So volunteerism, working in the community to restore old buses and all that kind of stuff. And working with children, I think, was mentioned as well. So, but they really did a massive effort. So I do want to shout out the East Yorkshire buses. The other one I've got is a blog post that Natalie Wadwell did, and she works in the Sydney area, so she's in New South Wales. And then also I did a post on a Facebook group, and I just want to read out the quote that I got back from it, from a guy called Weston Davis. And I told him I was going to quote him, but he basically said, because I wrote a blog that you can find on Medium about the day.
Yep.
He just replied, great article. Engaging children can solve many problems, but most notably the lack of volunteerism, board membership and local employees. If we tell a compelling story and provide reasons for youth to be in our city, they may stay and continue the legacy. That was Weston Davis, who is a member of the ELGL 50 group on Facebook. And I wanted to read that out because I thought that.
So where is he? Is he based in the US?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, what is just overwhelming here is people from so many different countries coming together, sharing their thinking. Go on, Wendy.
Was there anything much from Scotland? Did you see much from Scotland?
Actually, yes.
The
Scottish government.
Yeah.
There's a Scottish government engagement account on Twitter. They definitely got involved.
I just want to direct people to Scotland, being that I am 36.5% Scottish, from the Isle of Skye, where they killed all their neighbors, really gentle people on Skye.
So
a few years ago, when I was doing one of these endlessly boring and somewhat useless jobs that I used to get, which was to do a manual for community engagement. And after a while, I started turning down those consultancies because there were so many manuals. and so much online that it just felt like money for jam. It really wasn't fair to take money for. But the last time I did it legitimately, the Scottish government just stood out in absolute italics, including, and I just want to have a little shout out for rural community engagement, that the Scottish government has got this topic just nailed. So it's a government publication on rural community engagement in Scotland.
Brilliant.
Like guidelines, very grounded, very, very practical. And I guess for me, it's so reassuring to know that we're not mad orphans out there on our own. Like, this really is
absolutely
now a global thing. When I started doing community engagement, which was about 1969, actually, at the South Australian Housing Trust, when I had a job that allowed me to live in a coat closet. That was my office, was the closet, actually. I was in the closet at the Housing Trust in Adelaide in 1969. And I mean, we were just desperately trying to just get basic engagement with tenants. And I remember taking the report of the engagement with the Housing Trust tenants to the chief architect. And he actually did drop it in the bin in front of me and asked me what my credentials were. And I said, well, I didn't really have any, but this was exactly what, a large number of tenants had said in response to my survey and discussions. And he said, Wendy, I'm going to tell you how the world works. We are architects here. They had a big architects branch then. He was the deputy chief architect. And when we went to architecture school, they told us what the tenants needed. And they needed the housing that we have designed for them. And I said, Mr. Jones, I think was his name. I said, if you've got your head in the freezer in one of those kitchens and a child comes through the back door, you could be decapitated, Mr. Jones. Like these kitchens are galley kitchens with kids running back and forth. There's no way that you can keep your pot handles not able to be knocked over by a running child. There is no lounge room that you can close off with a door and put a small heater in. All the heat's going up the stairs. I mean, these houses are appalling, and most of our tenants are single parents. And he told me how the world worked. And it was an interesting experience about 3 years later when Don Dunstan appointed me to the board of the Housing Trust. And then I was able to ask Mr. Jones on every occasion to show me the research behind his new plans before we approved them. But that's how I became a planner. And that's really how I became an engagement planner, was I saw those women weeping in their lounge room saying, who could possibly have designed a house like this? And then the man telling me that, well, it's the expert blind spot. We know all about this. It's exclusionary professionalism. So, when we talk about people all over the world being part of this conversation, it's really heartening.
I must just say,
it's massive. It's massive.
Going from you sitting in that closet, being told by Mr. Jones how the world works, to now knowing, imagine if you could have said to him, well, Mr. Jones, my birthday is going to be Global Community Engagement Day. But I totally resonate with that. I work on my own as a sole practitioner. And it is soul destroying at times. I often talk about that when you're trying to get a point across about how important community engagement is. And so for me, this day, it really does mean something. It gives me goosebumps, which I always talk about as a good measure of significance. Because just knowing that there's so many people around the world from so many different countries that are doing the similar kind of work, and that are equally passionate about people's voices being heard or working together with communities. It's just brilliant.
I just wanted to respond to Wendy there with regards to the Scottish one. So it was the Healthcare Improvement Scotland. I think they did a few tweets, and I do remember, I think it was the Ambassador's Office of the USA in Edinburgh.
US,
they also tweeted. So there was a few Scottish ones there. Yeah, definitely.
Great.
I'd said to Andrew a couple of days before that one of my goals was to get Barack Obama involved, him being somebody I idolise, being a fellow left-hander. And obviously community. He used to be a community organizer back in the day before he was well known. So I'd love to get him involved. So Andrew, anything that was coming through from connected to America, it was like, oh, there's a potential link through to Barack Obama, and that was definitely a Scottish government one, wasn't it? Or Scottish consulate.
There was a few presidential links. There was a Jimmy Carter school, and there was a Thomas Jefferson summer house, I think. And then the ambassador's consulate in Edinburgh for the US.
One of my favourites. I thought I love it when we get to this level, because it's so far from where we are in South Australia. The Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office, when they got involved sharing something, I just thought I love that the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office is involved. The Royal London Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. I used to actually work there back in 2007, not at that council. I worked for a voluntary organisation in that area. So as Wendy's probably been reading in my book, because she's been reading my draft.
I was talking all about that area. You're going to read about it in the forthcoming book.
Yeah, you will read about it. I like that plug. That's a good plug. But Aisha went to such an effort this year. She actually contacted me and Andrew a couple of weeks before saying, I'm planning on doing this. We really ought to get involved, share some of our work. And I loved hearing from different members of their staff via video. Yeah, they've recorded some content around how they engage in general and how they engage with children and young people. And I loved discovering they have their job titles are consultation and insight officers. And I thought that's really very nice and specific about their role, and the idea that somebody can give you insights into consultations that have happened, I thought was fantastic. So yeah, definitely special shout out to them. I was also really thrilled when you see the big names like Santos. They're an Australian energy pioneer. They were launching a community grants program, and they'd chosen to do that on Global Community Engagement Day. Very smart use of Global Community Engagement Day, knowing that we'll mention it and it gets attention. Then we got really excited, didn't we, Andrew, when there were things like the Sumatran tigers that were featured, and villages in Africa. Some of the organizations that work with building capacity of communities, small African villages, that stuff is just like, wow, this is global community engagement. And then really excitingly, I think by the evening on Thursday, and Andrew texted saying, have you seen that the National Space Centre in the UK have tweeted, and what better, I think Andrew said on his retweet, what better global community engagement day than actually looking at the entire Earth from space. Just brilliant. And then people for me, Gatwick Airport was brilliant to see them coming on board. My in-laws live very near Gatwick Airport, so I've been following some of their stuff. And people like the American Youth Symphony Orchestra, going into the arts world.
There was a couple of community engagement.
North Yorkshire, I liked seeing Dementia Forward. There was also an organisation somewhere, Multiple Sclerosis in Queensland. They were actually hosting an event. I think it was an online event for Global Community Engagement Day. So just brilliant seeing that stuff come up.
A nuclear power plant. Remember that? There was quite a few lawyers jumping on board. I don't know if I agree with that one, but
a nuclear power plant.
A nuclear power plant, the community engagement that they do. And then I think the bizarrest one I saw, and we've got to talk about bizarre ones, the bizarrest one I saw was a tyre distribution company. But they give back to the community, so engagement, yeah.
Well, I mean, from a road sort of safety perspective, everybody needs good tyres.
Well, I think their staff. I think the post was about their staff doing volunteer work in the community. Yeah. But,
and I must say, in relation to all of the sort of noise out there, all of these people using the hashtag and using it to their own advantage, of course, as you would, when you spot something that genuinely is like, oh, this interests me, it really was quite exciting. And for me, probably the most exciting moment, it's a tiny thing, Jersey, which I think is Jersey and Ireland off England, France.
Yeah, it's in between England and France, yeah.
It's down there, isn't it? Jersey, I don't know even whether it was Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, it might have been a few, the Jersey National Park. Yeah. And they used the day, I've written it down here, they were saying, they were reflecting of how in 2009, when 7,000 members of the community came together in peaceful demonstration to call for protection of their coastline. And they said nearly 12 years later, the coastline is now protected by these really strict regulations that the government have put in place. And I just thought, wow, how amazing to share that kind of story on Global Community Engagement Day and to sort of use it as a way to sort of reflect and look back. I was really excited by that one.
This reminds me of a coastline story. Back in the late 80s, I had the kind of job that you just would love, actually, with the wonderful late Kevin Taylor. We did this job together. And we were invited by what was then the Urban Land Authority in Melbourne to look at what was then called an environmental effects statement. So basically a social impact assessment sort of thing for a gigantic project in Williamstown on Port Phillip Bay. And this was going to involve a 6-star hotel, a marina, endless waterfront activities, and so on, and completely devastate a very complicated and sensitive marine ecology, because the site had been a rifle range, so it had been locked up. So it was really pristine maritime environment with intertidal wading birds and birds that came from Siberia and all this kind of thing. And so Kevin and I assessed the environmental effects statement, and we had to talk to the activists in Williamstown as a result. And then we said we thought the whole project was terrible and the ULA should have nothing to do with it. And furthermore, we were now withdrawing our labor because we didn't want to be passing messages from the activists to the proponent. It just felt ethically really dodgy. So at cabinet level, the project was stopped. And then Kevin and I were rehired to do the engagement with what was then the Friends of the Rifle Range to get the project up. And it's built. And now you can walk on the boardwalk through, around the edge of Williamstown on Port Phillip Bay on this particular site, which is called the Range, because it was a rifle range. And that's the feature of it, the thing that nearly got destroyed. But, you know, that was 1988. I think our big event was 1989. We had 500 people in a giant marquee, and I just about had a heart attack from terror. Like community people had to grab engagement then. They had to shake the government. The Deputy Prime Minister, Premier Joan Kerner, she was the Minister for Conservation, Forests and Lands, and this was in her electorate. It just about brought down the government. And now at least we have some scaffolding that allows communities to have their say. It's not perfect, right? And it can be corrupted, but then there was nothing, right? Except direct action by these advocates in this community. And I mean, I walk around there now when I go to Melbourne and I think, right, good job. But it was a pit battle that went on for years.
Again, you know, we'll no doubt tag the Jersey National Park when we share this video to, you know, hopefully they'll tune in and watch and they'll hear that story and they'll say, oh, wow, well, our story is this. And I just think the more we can encourage sharing.
Tag the Range, because that's a wonderful story.
The Range in Williamstown, we'll do that. So looking to the future now, Andrew, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of Global Community Engagement Day? Because this is clearly not going to stop at year 4. In fact, next year we've got our fifth anniversary. That's a good one.
Yeah, obviously, I think to see it keep growing and growing, you know, it is getting better every year, and more people are engaging for the right reasons and getting on board with the themes. And yeah, the more we need to come up with a theme for next year, and probably need to set it a little bit earlier this time rather than.
Perhaps we should do that now. Perhaps anybody that's watching this could comment on the video and maybe give us some ideas.
Yeah, let's get some engagement going. Let's get people saying that what the theme should be for next year. Definitely help us out a little bit. But I think for me, one of the things I'd love to see, and I know I've mentioned this to Becky, is we all know what a Google Doodle is. So when you open your Google search engine, you've got the little doodle of the day, whatever it might be, celebrating someone's birthday, someone's anniversary, or the Olympics, or whatever. let's hope for our 5th anniversary next year that if that's not too soon, we can get a Google Doodle of Global Community Engagement Day.
Oh, great.
Look, Andrew, if there's anybody in the world that can make that happen, I really have my faith in you on that one. I just think you'll work out the way. I'm not convinced about 5 years. I think set that as your goal. Maybe our 10-year anniversary. I don't know. We'll see. But yes, I love that one. That would be just amazing, wouldn't it? Imagine Wendy opening up Google on her birthday and going, "Oh, look."
That'd be awesome.
Have you got a Wikipedia page, Wendy, that we can link to so that everyone...
You must be on Wikipedia. Are you not on Wikipedia? How do you get
Oh
Wikipedia
dear, I better write. Okay,
Yeah,
I
we
can
need to get
tell
you
you
on
what I
Wikipedia.
want for next year.
Go on then, Wendy. What do you want?
I want to make sure, and I'm conscious that I'm in the realm here of digital engagement people. So I say this advisedly. I really don't want the baby to get chucked out with the bathwater here. I understand that we had to go virtual, digital, right? This is already, I'm having 5 Zooms today and I'm supposed to be retired, right? I'm having 5 full-on Zooms. This is number 3, right? So, what I want us to remember as we reach something like herd immunity and get a grip on these new variants and get vaccinated and, people stop dying and all of this kind of thing, that there was a lot of wonderful stuff that happened in the embodied sphere, that embodiment's important too. We're animals. I had a man fall in love with me on eHarmony recently, and I had to tell him that it wasn't happening because I was an animal.
Happens all the time to us, doesn't it, Wendy?
I couldn't smell him, and therefore it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
We're animals, and we sense each other, and you both of you know from don't look at me like that, Andrew. It's true. What happens in a room, when you can sense all of a sudden it's either toast and you might as well go home, or you've crossed the Rubicon and you're going to get this through. It's going to work out. You're going to come to some kind of agreement with the residents or whatever the topic is. I just want to make sure that we still keep our animality, our embodiedness alive, and that we don't end up with clients who are saying, "Gee, that was good, and we didn't have to get yelled at by those smelly people. They smell, those people in Hindmarsh. Do you know that? They smell bad." I don't want that. I want them to still be able to be smelly and for us to still be there listening to them and trying to do the right thing with it.
Yeah, and I'll echo that with my personal sort of goals for it. I mean, other than getting Barack Obama involved face-to-face, that would be good with Barack Obama. And now getting Antarctica involved, that's another goal. For me, I think, as you're saying, embodiment, I think the actual face-to-face element, what we've clearly created here is a global movement that is happening. And we've got the online element happening. Everybody's using the hashtag sharing. I really want to see more community engagement practitioners, particularly in Australia. I think Australia is getting a bit left behind on this movement at the moment. I'd like to see more of our colleagues who work in this sector getting involved in this and celebrating in some way on Global Community Engagement Day and using the social media to share what they're doing so that we all know about it, but having a morning tea or having a lunch or doing a seminar. And obviously this year is so different because around the world, everybody did have to do it online, except here in South Australia. But I'd really like to see more of that sort of actual embracing of the day as a reason or an excuse to get together. And even if that getting together is I know Alison Hendricks just shared, she'd done some kind of, I think they'd gone out for lunch and then somebody else had talked, or maybe it was her, they'd caught up with people online. I want to see that actual celebration happening. Use it as a day to celebrate being community engagement practitioners. That definitely would be my personal goal. And to take some pride in it, to be proud.
I saw the Alison Hendricks post, and it was me that commented. I'd had a coffee in the morning with Dan Poppin.
That's right.
Who's a colleague of ours in South Australia as well. And then in the next morning, I had a kind of a Zoom catch up with Liz, who is the CEO of Laura Consulting in Toronto and Hamilton, because
awesome.
obviously it was still Global Community Engagement Day in Canada at the time, and so we had a catch up the next morning for me. But it was good because I kind of bookended the day, you know, here in South Australia, and then talking to Liz online about what community engagement is going to look like for the next year. That was our main point of the conversation.
That's brilliant.
And how things might adapt over the next year, and maybe slowly go back to a little bit more face-to-face. Certainly our colleagues over in New Zealand apparently have been doing it from around August, September already. And certainly here, I've been able to get out and actually have meetings with people face-to-face already this year, which pretty much the whole of last year I didn't do at all.
Yeah. So hopefully by next year we will be in a new normal for Wendy and those in the world that are still locked down and hiding away. The other one thing, just to drop in TikTok, mine was the only TikTok entry this year. I think I actually haven't checked, but the TikTok thing was a bit of a joke. But I was sitting having dinner with my family on the Thursday. That was the actual community engagement day here. And the world was just sort of, it's such a long day, isn't it, Community Engagement Day, Andrew? Because we start pretty much ahead of the rest of the world. And then when we wake up the next day, it's still going. In fact, it's blown out of it. It just goes to every scale because the Northern Hemisphere wakes up, and all the Scottish and the East Yorkshians and the American consulates everywhere are all suddenly tweeting and Instagramming. So when we wake up, there's lots. But by that Thursday evening, I was sitting having dinner with my family and talking about it. And I said, the theme this year is engaging children and young people. And then I thought to myself, but I've seen no children or young people yet on anything. Nobody has actually got a child involved in talking about the importance of community engagement. And so I was like, right, kids, to the office now. We're going to make something. And they were like, well, as long as it's on TikTok, we don't care. We'll do it if it's TikTok. And so I literally just grabbed my phone, got TikTok, found a piece of music, and we just made up this thing where they pretended to be me at work. And I'm not sure they really grasped it. I think they maybe did understand the concept a little bit.
Like they grasped it to me.
You know, and they were still actually, and people can again correct me if I'm wrong, I may have missed something, but I think they were the only children I saw. And I understand there's all sorts around posting children online and all that. But I think that this is maybe another sort of nudge in the direction of next year, whatever the theme is. I really encourage everyone to think creatively and about who we're talking about or the topic, and to not just be like a community engagement textbook, you know, and to just regurgitate what's important about community engagement, but to actually show it in action or demonstrate it with a bit of passion. I'd like to see. That's Becky's rant for the day.
I'd like to suggest that we might think about for next year, just to put it on the agenda, the issue of the expert. The expert blind spot, exclusionary professionalism, the gatekeepers, the people with clout, all of that. There's some really interesting American research about the research about influence. You remember how successful we were with the topic of influence, as in a failure, in trying to get traction around that. This is the dark side of the influence question. So it's worth thinking about. I mean, we want the experts to be part of the process. We can't leave them out. We need our traffic engineers, hydrologists, civil engineers, a whole bunch. And we have to find a way where they have a role that's appropriate, that doesn't separate communities from them because of their perceived extra wisdom. Anyway, we can think about that.
I think that's a good subject, because I think it is actually changing, because I don't know, Becky, you probably get it as well, but you do get university students that are doing urban planning, geography, engineering type courses that actually do reach out to you occasionally and say, look, I'm doing this semester a module on community engagement, and I've done some searching and I found your name and I just want to have a chat. And I have had that, especially since being in South Australia. Over the last few years, I probably get 2 or 3 people a year from university that are on various different courses, just reaching out because it's now part of their learning, which is great.
And I think, you know, I remember a very wise friend of mine, Paul James in Sydney, who was an activist architect, and he told me early on that my job was not to trivialize or disempower the experts on a consultation, on a planning consultation job. And he was really talking about the architects, but these experts in the urban field in particular bring a huge amount of wisdom. I remember a hydrologist once confiding in me that humans seemed congenitally incapable of understanding the power of water. And so flooding is so difficult for hydrologists to get across to communities. It's like we're hardwired not to believe that our whole community could be washed away. They have a massive contribution to make. We just have to get them in perspective, that's all. But it's a thought.
But I think also, and we need to wrap this up because I think everybody's probably had enough of us after an hour, but becoming experts as the community engagement, we mustn't become the experts as community engagement people and therefore start sort of just preaching it all the time, but never actually practicing it. We really need to be demonstrating how we engage. And that's not the reading from a textbook stuff. So, okay, I'm going to wind it up there, but thank you both so much. This has been brilliant. I'm hoping that everybody that's been watching, listening in has enjoyed the chat as well. So Global Community Engagement Day 2022, 28th of January 2022. That feels so weird saying that year, but that's going to be year 5. Andrew, what do you reckon we'll do for the hashtag? Should we just go with the main one, Global Community
I think as we've seen this year, the main one that's been used is hashtag Global Community Engagement Day, and I think if we push the effort towards that one, we'll still watch the others, but certainly that was the one that got the most content shared.
Yeah. Great. All right. So watch this space. We'll work on a theme as well.
I'm honored
very much.
Let's keep fomenting revolution.
Anyone in Antarctica, get on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go Scotland. Go Scotland.
Yeah. And any Google execs that want to contact me, you know where I am.
Barack, I'll take Biden as well. Biden can get involved if he wants, or Kamala Harris. But Trump's not busy these days. Perhaps we'll get him involved. Right.
Go there. Okay. Thank you.